What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the show. This is the Science Dispatch Podcast. My name is Cameron English. That is Dr. Chuck Dinnerstein, Director of Medicine at the American Council on Science and Health. Chuck, it's great to see you.
And it's good to see you, too, especially as we roll into the holiday season.
Yes, looking forward to it. The big Christmas holiday is next week. Gifts to open, too much turkey to eat.
Turkey for Christmas?
Why are you talking like that?
Of course, this is a Jew talking. So a traditional Jewish meal on Christmas is Chinese food in a movie. Let's be clear.
That's okay. I'm okay with that. You know what I mean? I'm doing the 24 hours of A Christmas Story, and if there's a little chow mein brought into that equation, I'm not going to be mad about it.
Okay, but it's a goose. That's no turkey.
It's a Chinese restaurant. That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah. That's a cultural thing because the Chinese and the Jews were the only people who had nothing to do on Christmas.
It's smiling.
We found one another.
All right, enough of our antics, everybody. We hope you enjoy your holidays. While you get ready to enjoy all that delicious food, here is a buzzkill, a wet blanket from our friends at the Lancet. That most trustworthy of medical journals.
Now, be nice.
So this article is by our own Dr. Dinnerstein. This is called, "Has the Lancet Given MAHA the Momentum It Needs?" Chuck, you are a saint, my good man. I just love that you are trying in any capacity to associate the Lancet, the big brains at the Lancet, with MAHA.
Well, even a blind squirrel finds a nut.
And then chokes on it. Okay. Here's your summary, and then fill in some of the details for us. So you're right. The new Lancet series on ultra-processed foods draws on decades of global data, mechanistic evidence, and more than 100 prospective studies to argue that ultra-processed foods constitute a dietary pattern actively displacing traditional food cultures and driving chronic disease worldwide. Yet the NOVA framework, which is used to measure processing of a food, is itself contested, a point worth keeping in mind as the article advances its arguments. Okay, break it down for us.
Okay, so this was written by the same people that brought us the NOVA classification of processing foods, has written this article. And for those that are not aware of the NOVA classification, this is a means of describing how processed foods are, not how nutritious they are, but how processed they are. And they would like you to believe that the more processed they are, the less nutritious they become. And they have several categorizations of that. But an ultra-processed food basically goes along with what Michael Pollan more easily described as a food that has more than 5 ingredients or has an ingredient that you cannot pronounce. And the article begins by pointing out that ultra-processed foods are rapidly replacing traditional diets across the world. And they make a very reasonable argument and shows data showing that, in fact, what they describe as ultra-processed foods, foods that are designed by large corporations to serve populations, are, in fact, replacing what's been considered a traditional diet. And they go on, as that framework suggests, that the quality of the diet is more impacted by its processing than by what it contains. And for that, there is a great deal of contention. At that point, from my point of view, they kind of go off the rails. And when they talk about chronic disease, it's important to say that there are any number of chronic diseases in the world today. But the data on the impact of diet affects primarily dysregulation of sugar metabolism, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease and dysregulation of fat metabolism and atherosclerosis. But a lot of the other chronic diseases like cancer, like neurologic disease, like traumatic injury, have very little, if any, relationship to diet. So to paint all of chronic disease as nutritionally based is already coming off the rails. They then take it a little further because they say that the real problem here is that capitalism is the source of the problem. That it's the great Satan of the large food companies that are capitalist in their very nature that are driving this end of our health. And that's where Lancet and Maha get together. That they both see big corporations as the problem. Do corporations cause difficulties? Absolutely. I'm not going to defend big corporations. They have their own flank of people that they can hire to defend themselves. But they've gone into the marketplace to fulfill a need, perhaps in the sense of Steve Jobs, a need that we didn't even know we had. After World War II, in the first world, the first high-income countries, women left home and went into the workforce. They're in the workforce now because at this point in time, you probably need a two-income family to do well. And that means that there was no longer anybody there to make dinner. And because of that, there's been the rise of convenience foods. Now, was that something exploited by corporations? Probably. But they didn't put the people into the workforce, and they didn't require them to no longer cook, nor did they, cause the end of home ec classes where we could actually learn something about nutrition and how to cook for ourselves. I mean, if you can make meals for yourself, where did you learn that?
The thing I find lots of things troubling about this commentary, this series of articles they put out. But I think one of the most frustrating now as a parent of two young children with limited time, full-time job, same thing for my wife, as you just said. At the end of the day, if I can prepare a meal relatively quickly that's nutritious, the fact that some of the ingredients are processed is really immaterial, right? If I can give them a nutrient-dense meal, that's easy to cook. I can cook it in an air fryer or a microwave. Then that's okay, right? So there's a certain kind of snobbery in this, right? Like what we really need is everyone to harvest their own grains and their own vegetables from their garden and then prepare a fresh meal each and every night. I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is these people are divorced from the people they're giving advice to. You know what I'm saying? So
right, well, it's even weirder than that. I mean, there's a series of commercials now for a whole new diet subscription. They have any number of these Fresh Direct and these other programs where you can order meals. But the latest one comes with its own oven, and you just show the oven the code on the meal, and it cooks it for you. You don't even have to understand how to work a microwave to manage this. And I'm saying, so on the one hand, we have these businesses generating this, and on the other hand, we have people saying, well, no, you have to go back and, as you said, harvest your own grain. It would be nice if you could take the wheat and mill it yourself. And, if you can't do that, maybe buy a 25-pound sack of, unbleached flour, and then you could make your own bread and all these other things. And during the pandemic, when people had time for that, there may have been more of that going on. But it is extremely difficult to put 3 square meals on the table a day without taking up 4 or 5 hours worth of work. And these convenience foods have filled in the gap.
Right. Well, it's funny you mentioned COVID, because what was going on during that period? You had people out of work, stuck in their homes. And so out of sheer boredom, they're like, okay, let's make a loaf of bread from scratch. Why the hell not, right?
Right.
But it's
Renaissance of sourdough bread was during COVID.
But in other words, it's just not practical. But I also think it's a waste of time, because you can get items, and you've said this too in some of your writing. I think we both have, is that you can select highly processed foods that are nutrient dense, that will fill you up, that aren't saturated with sugar or salt or carb, whatever the boogeyman is. And you can eat reasonably well, even if you go to McDonald's, right? If you go and you're selective about what you buy, you'll be okay. And so to your point about capitalism, this seems very much like an ideological battle, and there's a little bit of scientific sprinkles thrown in there to sort of make it sound more
that's what
rigorous.
bothered me the most about the article was that there was enough of the nuggets of science in there to have some truth in the situation, but then they just took it and they realigned the dots as they want. And I was just thinking while you were talking about another great example. So David Chang, who is a great chef, Momofuku, has written several cookbooks, and his recipes were not as bad as Thomas Keller that went on for 3 pages and took you 2 days to do. But his recipes could take you an hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours to make a dinner. Then he had children. And his more recent writing is very, very different. His recent writing says, let's go baste a roast on Sunday, and let me show you 3 different ways to use that over the course of the week to make meals, because nobody has the time for the recipes that I wrote 2 years ago before children arrived.
And I got to be honest, even if I did have the time for that, there's so many other things I'd like to do, like spend time with my kids, take my son to the park and turn on YouTube videos and have a dance party with my daughter who's, coming close to 2 years old. Like, that's the stuff that makes memories, so I don't want to be chopping celery for an hour so I can make an all natural chicken soup, right? If it's in a can, I can heat it up and eat it, and then I'm good, right?
Right. Despite the fact that all that extra salt in there that you're probably going to swallow up to 3 times your size. On the other hand, as I've always believed that the kidneys have been getting rid of our salt for millennia and probably know much better how to deal with salt than I do. So I just leave it up to my kidneys. They seem to keep my salt balance in good shape.
Yeah, but I mean, proper hydration, a can of Campbell's, it's not going to kill you. It's just these people. I was talking to another doctor recently. And I said, I'm more afraid of not cutting up the hot dog small enough for my daughter than I am about the amount of. It's just like I don't have time. My brain does not have enough capacity to freak out about all the things that I'm supposed to freak out about. It's just not practical.
Fair enough. So that I think that's been the problem with this. Now there is no definition of an ultra processed food. We're waiting for Secretary Kennedy and his gang to release that. They were going to give it to us sometime, I guess, in November. That's been pushed back into maybe March or February. And we'll see what comes of it then. But I guarantee you that this paper will be among the things that is cited as the argument why we have to change our nutritional ways and find different pathways. And it avoids many of the social determinants of our diet that are important, besides time, having access to the nutrients that we wish to buy. I live out in Long Island, and from May and through October, we have a bumper crop of fresh vegetables. But now we are in root vegetable season because it's winter. So if you want something beyond a turnip, you got to go to the supermarket. Farm stands have turnips and cauliflower, and that's pretty much it. Now you're in California, you have a little bit more of a year-round options, but that's not the case for a lot of the country.
Yeah, the whole thing just strikes me as a big distraction from things that you could fix, right? So,
or as I said, I've said before, bring back home ec. When do we teach in school nutrition? When do we teach in school how to cook yourself a meal? So that even if you wanted to do it.
Yeah.
Many people don't have that skill set. They weren't raised with it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a massive cultural change, as we talk about a lot, right? It's the mindset that you instill in people over time that affects their decisions. And I think as long as we have the kind of culture we have where everything has to be instantaneous and as little work as possible, as long as the world functions that way, the Lancet can put out as many of these dopey, policy papers as they want, and as long as they can file their lawsuits, they're going to be happy, and nothing's going to really be fixed. And here we are.
There we go.
Okay, so moral of the story is just a little bit of selection. Be judicious with your food choices, and you'll make it out okay.
Right, and I have to say, I've tried to defend the Lancet on other occasions, but this one they just wandered off They were definitely way out of their lane by the time they got done with the article.
Yeah, yeah. They're a bit of a clown college. I mean, the MMR vaccine thing and eating bugs and Marx is the midwife of medicine. Just they're just going off in like freshman college student land. All right. Well, that's my humble, unbiased opinion. Go read Chuck's article once again. It's called "Has the Lancet Given MAHA the Momentum It Needs?" Sounds like the answer might be yes. That is by Dr. Chuck Dinnerstein. That is at acsh.org. While you're there, click the subscribe tab, punch in your email address. We will send you the stories we publish. The ones you read are usually the ones we talk about. We are on X, ACSH.org. We are on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. ACSH Matter of Facts, hosted by Anna Delaski. Go check out that content. Thank you so much. Merry Christmas, everybody. We will see you in the new year.